Shen Buyu had a disorder called emotional detachment syndrome. She was icicled toward the entire world, except me. For 23 years, I was the only person who could enter her world. She would stay by my side all night, whenever I was sick, and stand at the door anxiously waiting whenever I came home late. After I fell asleep, she would quietly slip into my room and pull me into her arms. I thought it was simply the deep bond between a brother and his sister, until I found her diary beneath my pillow, until I discovered what had been added to the glass of milk delivered to me every night, until I was locked in the basement, watching her hold up a syringe and give me a sickly, blissful smile. Little brother, you were the one who entered my world, and now you want to leave without even saying goodbye. Isn't that a little cruel? At 3 in the morning, I woke with a hollow feeling in my stomach. The glowing clock beside my bed cast a cold white light, and the moonlight outside the window was hazy. My head felt heavy, and the sleepiness I felt before bed still hadn't fully faded. I shuffled out of bed in my slippers without even turning on the light, relying on more than 20 years of familiarity with the house. I made my way through the darkness toward the stairs. The Shen family's old estate was a typical European-style detached mansion. The 3rd floor held the bedrooms, while the 1st floor contained the living room, dining room, and study. My plan was simple. I would go downstairs and search the kitchen for the strawberry cake Aunt Zhang had left that evening, pour myself a glass of cold milk, and be done with it. Then I would come back and catch up on my sleep. But when I reached the landing at the 2nd floor turn, the faint sound of voices drifted through the crack beneath the door. It was coming from the study. I paused. My parents should have been asleep at this hour. Though they were constantly busy with business, they took their health very seriously. The lights went out at 10:30 sharp every night, a rule everyone in the family knew. Could something urgent have happened at the company? A flicker of doubt crossed my mind, but I did not think much of it. The Shen family's business empire was vast and complex, so it was not unheard of for them to hold a late-night meeting over an emergency. I softened my steps, eager to get downstairs and fill my empty stomach. But just as I was about to step onto the last stair, a familiar name reached my ears. A-xiu. It was my mother's voice. My heart jolted, and I froze in place. A-xiu was my childhood nickname. That name was rarely used by anyone outside the family. That my father's deep voice came through, carrying a weariness and heaviness I had never heard before. The hospital's test results are in. There's no mistake. Back then, the babies really were switched at the hospital. Switched? How could that be? I clearly watched the nurse bring a-xiu to us. He was as beautiful as a porcelain doll, exactly like the photos of you as a child. It was the nurse's mistake. That hospital's management had serious gaps back then. The security cameras were broken, and parts of the medical records were missing. If the child they raised had not undergone a checkup recently, and the blood test had shown no match with Mr. and Mrs. Fang, this truth might never have come to light. Mr. Fang? Mrs. Fang. The unfamiliar forms of address made me frown slightly. I instinctively quieted my breathing and silently moved to the study's half-closed door. I looked inside through the narrow gap. Only a wall lamp was lit in the study. In its warm yellow glow, my parents sat on a leather sofa with a thick stack of documents spread across the coffee table before them. The top sheet was the cover of a paternity test report I had seen before. My mother's eyes were red, and she clutched a tissue so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. My father sat beside her, one hand resting on her shoulder, his expression grave as though covered in frost. The child the Fang family raised is the one switched with a-xiu all those years ago. The Fangs have already contacted us, they said. They want to bring him back to meet us after a while. Switched at birth. Those words were like red-hot nails, hammering themselves into my mind. I stood outside the door. As the blood in my veins seemed to freeze, the hunger in my stomach vanished without a trace, replaced by a dizzying whirl. The floor beneath me seemed to turn into cotton, leaving me too weak to stand. The imposter heir. The words sprang into my mind at once, with an absurd, almost comical quality. I thought of my childhood friend, who spent every day glued to his phone, reading novels, especially stories about imposter and true heirs. He loved sending me ridiculous plots, like an imposter heir being thrown out and left homeless, while the true heir returned to inherit billions in family wealth, or an imposter heir enduring humiliation for years before seizing back the family business. After every message, he would cheekily ask me, "Shenziu, what would you do if you were the imposter heir? What would you do?" Back then, I would always laugh and fire back. My parents raised me all these years. Even if I weren't their biological son, they would never throw me out. Besides, with my abilities, I could still thrive even if I left the Shen family. That was easy to say. But when it actually came crashing down on me, I realized how hollow those casual jokes had been. In the face of reality, I leaned against the cold wall, my fingertips white from the force of my grip. My memories played through my mind like a film, flashing scenes from the past 20-odd years. When I was little, I scraped my knee, and my mother held me while she cried all afternoon. After I started school, I won my first scholarship, and Mr. Shen deliberately canceled an important meeting to take me out for my favorite steak. When I lost a competition and hid in my room, they knocked again and again, telling me it was alright and promising to support me for the rest of my life. All these years, I had enjoyed the Shen family's privileged lifestyle and received the best education, from an elite elementary school to top-ranked schools, and finally to the finance department of a prestigious university. Everything had gone smoothly. I had thought it was all simply my due, never realizing that the life I occupied was the one another person should have had. Guilt surged over me like a rising tide, nearly drowning me. I was not ungrateful. I knew perfectly well that the love I had received for more than 20 years, and this life of abundance, should have belonged to that boy. I was like a thief who had silently stolen his life and enjoyed everything that should have been his. But what could I do? The babies being switched back then was not my decision. I had not even been given the chance to resist. Before fate pushed me into the position of the Shen family's young master, I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Actually, even if I left the Shen family, I probably would not have a bad life. I was not some pampered, useless young master who could do nothing for himself. Over the years, I had learned business from Mr. Shen and had begun managing projects independently in my second year of college. I already owned several profitable investment companies. Even without the Shen family's influence, I could establish myself through my own abilities. As for making amends, once the true heir returned, I would do everything I could to make up for the 20-odd years he had lost. Whatever he wanted, as long as I could provide it, I would help him. Those thoughts ran through my mind, calming my chaotic emotions a little. But what truly kept me tossing and turning, unable to find peace, was never any of that. It was Shen Buyu, my older sister. Shen Buyu. Shen Buyu was 5 years older than me. In my memory, she had always been cold and distant. She was diagnosed with emotional detachment syndrome when she was very young and seemed unable to sense any emotion. According to my parents, she had rarely even cried as a child. She would only stare with wide, clear eyes, watching the world with a blank expression. Her talent was almost frightening. She could recognize 1,000 Chinese characters at 3 and pass grade 10 piano at 5. At 8, she won the National Mathematics Olympiad. At 15, she entered a top high school with the highest score in the city. At 18, she was admitted to Qingbai without taking the entrance exam. She pursued dual degrees in finance and biology. She was like a precisely programmed robot, perfect and calm, yet utterly devoid of warmth. Our parents were helpless to change her. They were busy with business during the years when she needed companionship most, but were absent far too often. By the time they realized how serious the problem was, Shen Buyu's personality had already taken shape, and trying to change it was already too late. The first time I noticed her loneliness was when I was 5. It was the weekend, and our parents had gone to the office again. Only she and I were home. I grabbed the picture book I'd just bought and ran to the study door. I saw her sitting on the window seat with her back to me, staring blankly at the plain trees outside. Sunlight streamed through the glass and fell across her, giving her a golden outline. Yet her silhouette was as lonely as a faded painting. I clutched the picture book and hesitated for a long time before gently pushing open the door and going inside. "Sister," I called softly. "What is it?" She turned around. There wasn't a ripple in her beautiful almond-shaped eyes. Her voice was cool and clear, just like her. "I think you look lonely, sister. I want to keep you company." She paused, apparently not expecting me to say that, then remained silent for a few seconds before turning back. She replied flatly, "Whatever." That was the first time I entered her world. From that day on, I became her little shadow. Whenever she went to the study to read, I would bring over a little stool and sit quietly beside her with my picture books. Whenever she went to the music room to practice, I would sit beside the piano bench, resting my chin in my hands and listening without making a sound. When she went to school, I would wait outside her classroom every day after school, so we could go home together. At first, she was clearly annoyed. Sometimes she would deliberately walk faster to shake me off. But when she looked back and saw me stumbling along behind her, my little face flushed bright red. She would instinctively slow her pace. Once, during a heavy downpour, I forgot my umbrella and waited for her at the school entrance. She came out under an umbrella and saw me soaked from head to toe. She frowned but said nothing, only tilting most of the umbrella toward me, while letting the rain soak her own shoulder. That was the first time I realized she wasn't truly ice-cold. When I was reading, she would quietly pull my slipping blanket back over me. When I made mistakes practicing piano, she patiently taught me the proper fingering. When I was sick, she would stay by my bedside all night without sleeping, feeding me medicine and wiping away my sweat. Those small acts of tenderness were like the warm spring sun, slowly melting the ice around her heart and gradually lighting up my entire childhood. Our parents soon noticed the change in her. They saw that Shen Buyu would, when I got a perfect score, let the faintest smile touch her lips. When my classmates bullied me, she showed anger for the first time. When I came home late, she would stand at the door and anxiously watch for me. "A-xiu, Thank you. You were the one who pulled Buyu out of that closed-off world. I only smiled and shook my head. Only I knew that I hadn't saved her. We had saved each other. To Shen Buyu, I was the first ray of light to enter her dark world. The only person she cared about in her more than 20 years of life. And the only source of warmth she had. And to me, she was the same. My parents were busy with work. So much of the time. It was Shen Buyu who raised me. She handled all my daily needs, from my meals and clothes to everything else. She personally tutored me in my studies and solved every problem I encountered. She was like an all-powerful guardian angel, always standing behind me and shielding me from every storm. We spent 20 years together. Those 20 years of companionship had long since been carved into our very bones, becoming an indispensable part of our lives. So, when I learned I was the imposter and might have to leave this home, the thing I couldn't bear to lose was not this privileged life, nor our parents' love, but Shen Buyu. I couldn't imagine what she would do when she learned I wasn't her biological younger brother, but a thief who had taken over her brother's life. What would her reaction be? Would she despise me, or turn cold? Or would she never speak to me again? That thought was like a thorn, buried deep in my heart and keeping me awake all night. I stood by the stairs for who knew how long, until the light in the study went out, and our parents' footsteps gradually faded away. Only then did I drag my heavy feet back to my room. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling with my eyes open. My mind was filled with images of Shen Buyu, her coldness and her tenderness, her lonely silhouette and the faint smile at the corner of her lips. It was almost dawn before I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, I was jolted awake by the breakfast bell downstairs. After washing up, I went downstairs and found the whole family already seated at the dining table. Our parents sat at the head of the table, and Shen Buyu sat to my right. My favorite century Yegan lean pork congee and steamed soup dumplings were on the table, along with strawberry pancakes made by Shen Buyu herself. Everything was just as it always was. Yet somehow, nothing was the same. The moment I sat down, I felt several gazes fall on me. They were our parents' eyes. When they looked at me, their emotions were complicated. There was heartache, concern, and something else, an indescribable inner conflict. I knew perfectly well. They had probably realized what I might have overheard last night. After all, with how observant they were, they couldn't have missed the traces I had left outside the study. But what truly made my whole body tense was Shen Buyu's gaze. She sat there with a knife and fork in her hands, leisurely cutting her pancake, while her gaze remained fixed on me, without moving once. It was a look I had never seen before. It was no longer the cool, indifferent gaze I knew, but one filled with an almost frantic intensity and an overwhelming possessiveness, like a wild beast that had been lying in wait for years. She had finally bared her fangs. Her gaze seemed ready to tear me apart and devour me, without leaving even a bone behind. Shen Buyu's stare made me intensely uncomfortable, so I could only look away. I picked up the bowl of congee before me and swallowed it mouthful by mouthful. A-xiu, did you sleep badly last night? I had a little trouble sleeping. Maybe I've been studying too hard lately. Mrs. Shen studied my face, clearly not fooled by my answer. Mr. Shen looked at me for a moment. If you're not feeling well, stay home and rest today. I had just started to say no, when Shen Buyu stopped cutting her pancake. After breakfast, I'll take you to school. No need, sister. I can go myself. I was afraid to face the strange emotion in her eyes, and even more afraid she would say something that broke my heart. I said, I'm taking you. The possessiveness in her eyes did not lessen in the slightest. I wanted to refuse again, but the moment I met her gaze, the words died in my throat, and I finally nodded. That breakfast seemed to last forever. I practically fled through the meal, then grabbed my school bag and headed outside. Shen Buyu followed behind me, always keeping one step away. Once we were in the car, she stared straight ahead without saying a word. The atmosphere in the car was so oppressive that I could hardly breathe. I gripped the seat belt and stared out the window, while neither of us spoke first. The car was so quiet that only the engine could be heard. The streets outside slid steadily behind us, yet the journey felt far longer than usual. I finally let out a sigh of relief when the car stopped at the school entrance. I pushed open the door to get out. Thanks you. I turned back. She looked at me for a long time, as if she had something to say. In the end, she only said, wait for me after school. Those words did not sound like a request, but more like a decision she had already made for me. I nodded, turned, and ran into school. But from that day on, I avoided her. During the day, apart from attending class, I was either buried in the library or staying in the lab. I stayed out as late as possible. Once I got home, I went straight to my room and locked the door. I didn't say another word to her. I knew I was hurting her, but I couldn't think of any other way. I even started packing my belongings. The gifts, photographs, and important documents I'd collected over the years went into a box, one by one. Almost everything was connected to Shen Buyu. I planned to move out when the true heir returned, rent an apartment near school, and live on my own. I had my own investment company, so I could support myself even after leaving the Shen family. I wouldn't have to take anyone else's place anymore. But whenever I saw the photos of Shen Buyu and me, or the scarf she wear upon and the notes she organized for me, I couldn't bear to pack them. I couldn't bear to leave this home. But leaving her was harder still. This went on for an entire week. Shen Buyu must have realized I was avoiding her, but she never pressed me for an explanation. Every morning, she left breakfast outside my door, and every evening, she waited outside the school gates right on time. She no longer tried to talk to me, but continued doing everything she could, as she always had. I knew she was waiting for me, but I didn't dare see her. I was afraid she'd reject me, afraid she'd turn cold. Even more, I feared that the moment I saw her, I'd fall apart in front of her and never be able to leave. Friday night, I came home an hour later than usual. When I reached the second floor, Shen Buyu was leaning outside my door, with a glass of milk in her hands. She wore black pajamas, her hair falling over her shoulders. She must have been waiting for a long time. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. My heart sank, and I turned to leave. "Fang's you," she called me back, exhaustion in her voice, leaving me no chance to escape. I had no choice but to turn around. "Sister, you're still awake." She walked over and held out the milk. "Have a glass before bed. It's good for you." Steam still rose from the rim, and the familiar scent of milk drifted toward me. I stared at the glass, my emotions in turmoil. Ever since I was little, 1 glass of milk every night had been her rule for me, and she had always prepared it herself. I took the glass and brushed against her cold fingertips. My hand instinctively pulled back. I lowered my head, afraid to meet her eyes. "Why are you avoiding me?" I tightened my grip, spilling milk onto the back of my hand, and flinched at the heat. "I'm not avoiding you. Things have been hectic at school lately, and I've been busy." It was a poor lie. Even I didn't believe it. Shen Buyu looked at me, clearly unconvinced. "But she didn't expose me. Is that so? Good." She stared at the glass in my hand. "Finish it before you go to sleep." I could only lift it and take a few sips. She watched me drink half the glass before finally returning to her room. Only after her footsteps disappeared down the hall did I dare breathe again. Watching her walk away, I finally let out a sigh of relief. But guilt rose in my chest. Once she was gone, I immediately shut the door, put the remaining milk on my bedside table, and never touched it again. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the milk with my thoughts in chaos. I knew I couldn't keep hiding from her, but still had no idea how to face her. I hadn't slept well all week, and soon after lying down, sleepiness overcame me. Yet my sleep remained restless, half asleep and half awake. I felt someone wrap their arms tightly around me from behind. Their arms and legs were wrapped around my body. Their grip tightened. I tried to turn over, but my body felt firmly pinned down. I tried to break free, but my hand touched something soft, and a familiar gardenia scent brushed my nose. The scent was unmistakably familiar, but for a moment, I couldn't remember where I'd smelled it. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids were too heavy to lift. Soon, I lost consciousness again. When my alarm rang the next morning, my entire body ached, as though I hadn't truly slept all night. My reflection was pale, with dark circles beneath my eyes. I rubbed my lower back, unable to understand what had happened. Could I really have slept in the wrong position? The next few days were the same. Every night, I woke with the feeling of being held tightly. Each morning, my face was deathly pale, and I felt more exhausted. At first, I thought it was my sleeping position, but after several days of this, even I could tell something was wrong. At breakfast on Monday, Mrs. Shen finally couldn't hold back. "A-xiu, what's wrong with you these past few days? Are you feeling unwell? Why don't you go to the hospital for a checkup?" They had clearly been watching me more closely than usual. I assumed they felt guilty about the babies being switched at birth. I was about to answer when Shen Buyu set down her knife and fork. "He's just been sleeping poorly lately and is suffering from stress-related exhaustion. I have some medication specifically for insomnia. I'll get it for him." She stood and headed upstairs. Watching her retreating figure, I felt a quiet surge of emotion. She really did still care about me. A short while later, Shen Buyu came downstairs with a small white box. "I had someone bring this back from overseas. It works very well. Take 1 pill before bed every night." I examined the box, but there was no production date, no instructions, not even a name for the medication. Though I was suspicious, I still put it in my school bag. After all, ever since I was little, she had taken care of everything for me. She had never harmed me. I even sincerely thanked her, taking all her care as proof that she was concerned about me. For the first 2 nights after taking the pills, I slept exceptionally well and felt much more refreshed. I thought the medicine she gave me really worked and gradually let down my guard around the white box. But only a few days later, that familiar sensation of being wrapped in an embrace returned. This time, it was even clearer. I could feel myself trapped in a warm embrace. All 4 limbs were held tightly, making it difficult to move even slightly. Then, On Friday morning, on my pillow, I found a long black hair. It was identical to Shen Buyu's hair. My heart sank. An absurd suspicion surfaced, but I refused to believe that the jasmine scent these past few days, the embrace I felt every night, and the way she stood by my bed, watching me drink milk, were all connected. She was my sister. How could she possibly do something like that? Even if we were no longer related by blood, I still didn't dare say that suspicion aloud. Clutching the strand of hair, I decided to see the truth for myself. That evening, when I got home, I still hid in my room. I didn't take the pill before bed, but simply turned off the light and lay down. I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. The minutes ticked by. A little after 1 in the morning, my door was gently pushed open. I heard the hinges creak softly. In the darkness, I deliberately slowed even my breathing. That familiar figure crept quietly toward me. It was Shen Buyu. She stood beside the bed for a while, as if checking whether I was asleep. Then she gently lifted the covers and slipped into bed. My entire body went rigid. Shen Buyu pressed herself against my back, wrapping an arm around my waist. Her legs tangled with mine. She buried her face against my neck, her nose lightly brushing my throat, as though greedily inhaling my scent. "Xiu, don't leave me." That familiar jasmine scent enveloped me once more, exactly as it had every night before. She held me tightly, like invisible chains locking me in place. My body remained rigid, and my mind went blank. So, she really had been the one holding me every night. I stayed awake the entire night. Only when dawn was near did she quietly get up and leave. After the door closed again, I opened my eyes and stared at the empty bed. My emotions were a tangled mess. Saturday morning, I woke up late, and when I went downstairs, Aunt John was the only one home, cleaning. "Young master, Mr. and Mrs. Shen have gone to the office. Miss Shen left early this morning and won't be back until noon." Hearing that she wouldn't return until noon, I felt strangely disappointed. I stood outside her bedroom for a long time, hesitating. In the end, I pushed the door open. I rarely entered her room. It was always kept locked, but today, it was slightly ajar. I took a deep breath and gently pushed my way inside. My heart was pounding. The room contained only black, white, and gray. There was nothing unnecessary in the bedroom. The entire room was just like her, minimalist and austere. The study was lined with books, and the piano she often played stood in the music room. The bedroom held only a bed, a wardrobe, and a bay window. I walked to the bed and immediately spotted a black notebook peeking out from beneath the pillow. Normally, I would never search through her things, but curiosity ultimately overcame reason. I reached out and gently pulled out the notebook. Its black cover was worn with age, clearly filled over many years. On the first page was her neat, elegant handwriting from when she was 5. I turned to the first page. Today, the little one from our family came running to find me. He was as adorable as a porcelain doll. He stared at me and said I was lonely. He wanted to keep me company. It was a little annoying. I continued turning the pages. The little one followed behind me again. I walked quickly, trying to shake him off, but he tripped and fell, crying and calling me sister. So I had to turn back and help him up. His hand was very soft. It rained, and the little one didn't have an umbrella. I gave him mine and got soaked. Yet with red-rimmed eyes, he said he would protect his sister from now on. It was a little funny. He was so small. How could he protect me? The little one came down with a fever. I watched over him all night, giving him medicine and wiping away his sweat. He held my hand and called me sister. At that moment, something seemed to stir inside my heart. I was admitted to a university away from home on a special recommendation. Before I left, the little one hugged me and cried, saying he couldn't bear for me to go. I patted his back and promised to return once he got into college. What I really wanted to say was that I couldn't bear to leave him either. Those entries spanned more than 20 years. I realized my feelings for the little one had changed. He was my younger brother. I shouldn't have such thoughts. In pain, I began deliberately distancing myself from him, but he still followed me everywhere like a little shadow. I returned home. The little one had grown into a tall, handsome young man, even taller than me. He smiled and called me sister, then welcomed me home. My heart skipped a beat. I kept turning the pages, my fingers trembling more with each one. Eventually, I reached the 2 most recent entries. The handwriting was still clear and firm, but the words were no longer restrained. Today, Mom and Dad told me Xiu isn't their biological son. I froze. Then I laughed. The heavens were on my side. We weren't related by blood. At last, I could love him openly. Today, Xiu started avoiding me. Does he know? Does he despise me? No. I can't let him leave. He is mine. He can only be mine. She entered my room late at night and gave me milk laced with something. Then she gave me pills without instructions. She did it all because she was terrified of losing me. Her emotional detachment disorder made it difficult for her to sense other people's emotions, but made her feelings for me especially intense and obsessive. Looking back later, at the moment I learned we weren't related by blood, the first thing I felt was actually joy. Guilt and panic came afterward. I had long grown used to having her by my side and had already become unable to live without her. Perhaps it was when I was 5, when I first walked into her room and told her I wanted to keep my sister company. From that moment on, we were more than ordinary siblings. I closed the diary and sat beside the bed for a long time. My emotions were a tangled mess. Finally, I took a deep breath and returned the notebook to its place. Then I got up and went downstairs. I had to discuss this with my parents first. When I went downstairs, my parents had just returned from the office. When Mrs. Shen saw me sitting in the living room, she stopped short. "Xiu, what are you doing here?" "Mom, there's something I need to tell you." They exchanged a look, then sat down across from me. Mrs. Shen asked cautiously, "Do you know everything?" I nodded. "That night, I heard everything you said in the study." Her eyes reddened at once, and she reached out to hold my hand. "I'm sorry. We never meant to keep this from you. We simply didn't know how to tell you." I shook my head. "What happened back then wasn't your fault." "I don't blame you either." Mr. Shen sighed and pushed a stack of documents toward me. They were the same documents I had seen in the study, except this time, they placed the decision entirely in my hands. "These are the records of your biological parents." When I opened the file and saw the names, I froze. My biological parents were actually Shen Buji's parents. How could this be? I stared at the documents, unable to recover for a long while. Back then, every mother giving birth at that hospital was either wealthy or powerful. The Shen and Fang families had always been business partners, and you and Shen Buji were born in the same hospital room. I looked up and asked, did Shen Buji know all along? Remembering how he had sent me stories about real and fake heirs every day, I was certain that boy had been up to no good. The Fang family was afraid you wouldn't be able to accept it, so they never dared tell you. He helped keep it secret. Clutching the documents, I felt this was even more outrageous than the stories about real and fake heirs that Shen Buji had sent me. At that moment, I had only one word in mind: surreal. What was even more absurd was that he had actually asked me what I would do if I were the fake heir, and I hadn't suspected a thing. But Mr. Shen looked at me solemnly. "Xiu, whether you're our biological son or not, you're still the son we raised. The Shen family door will always be open to you. The company's line of succession will always have a place for you. The Fang family sincerely wants to acknowledge you as their son. Whether you stay with the Shen family or return to the Fang family, we'll support you." His words warmed my heart and brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Mom and Dad. I want to visit the Fang family first." I sniffed. Mr. Shen nodded. "All right." Mr. Shen offered to drive me there, but I smiled and declined. It was perfect. I wanted to have a proper talk with Shen Buji too. The Fang villa was in the same gated community. When I drove over, Shen Buji was sitting on a swing in the yard, scrolling through a web novel. When he saw me get out, he immediately jumped off the swing, ran over, patted my shoulder, and laughed nonstop. "Fang Xiu, you finally made it. I told you so. This plot is even more exciting than the novels I read." I rolled my eyes at him and slapped his hand away. "You knew all along. Why didn't you tell me?" "My parents wouldn't let me. Besides, I wanted to see your reaction when you learned you were the fake heir, and I was the real one." I couldn't be bothered to argue with him and followed him into the living room. Mr. and Mrs. Fang were already waiting for me on the sofa. The moment Mrs. Fang saw me, she stood up, her eyes turning red. She looked at me and called out through a sob, "Xiu, my son." She came toward me, wanting to hug me, but afraid I might resist. She raised her hand several times without daring to touch me. "Mom." I hugged her first and called her Mom. She finally broke down and cried while holding me. Mr. Fang came over and patted my shoulder. His voice was thick with emotion. All right, you're home now." We talked for a long time that day. Near the end, Shen Buji suddenly seemed to remember something. He sighed from the side. "My godparents became my biological parents. Didn't you always praise Fang Xiu and his sister for being so outstanding? Now, you've gotten everything you wished for." His words made us all laugh. The Shen family had Shen Buyu, whom I couldn't leave behind. The Fang family had my biological parents and Shen Buji. To me, it made no difference where I lived. I hadn't lost either family. It couldn't have worked out better. But just then, the living room door was suddenly pushed open. Shen Buyu stood in the doorway, her face pale. Her gaze passed over everyone and landed straight on me. The atmosphere in the entire room froze. The flicker of panic in her eyes was even more direct than what I had read in her diary that morning. Shen Buji instinctively hid behind me, even though I already knew the truth. Was she really my sister? Why was I still afraid of her? Shen Buyu ignored him. She first gave Mr. and Mrs. Fang a slight bow and greeting, then turned to me. "Come with me." There wasn't a hint of a smile on her face, and her tone left no room for refusal. I knew she had misunderstood. She thought that after reuniting with my biological parents, I would stay with the Fang family and never return. "Buyu, come with me." She interrupted me again, her eyes already reddening. When she repeated herself, her voice was thick with tears and carried a hint of danger. My heart softened, so I stood up. "All right, I'll go with you. I told Mr. and Mrs. Fang I would come back later. Mrs. Fang nodded worriedly and reminded us to be careful on the way. Behind me, Shen Buji secretly gave me a thumbs up. I followed her out of the Fang residence and got into the car. The car slowly left the gated community, and she didn't say a word. I watched the world outside and gradually realized this wasn't the road back to the Shen residence. The surroundings grew increasingly remote, and my chest tightened. Sister, where are we going? This road leads to the outskirts. There were no familiar buildings left ahead. Shen Bai still didn't answer. Soon, a sudden wave of dizziness swept over me. My consciousness began to blur. I tried to speak, but no sound came from my throat. Before long, I completely lost consciousness. When I woke again, I was lying on a large, soft bed. Everything around me was pitch black. Only the small night light above me cast a faint red glow. The moment I tried to sit up, my wrists and ankles tightened at once. Both my hands and feet were locked in cold handcuffs and shackles. A black strip of cloth also gagged me. Looking around, I realized the room was hidden underground. I tried to call for help, but the cloth gag kept me from making a sound. What chilled me even more were the walls around me. They were covered with photographs of me. The photographs stretched from one wall to the next, almost mapping out my entire childhood and youth. 5 years old, 10, 18. In the photos, I was laughing, crying, reading, and playing the piano. There were even pictures of me, alone in my bedroom, grinning foolishly as I hugged a birthday present. Many of the photographs showed moments even I didn't know had ever been captured. There had clearly been no one else in my room that day, yet the angles in the photographs plainly came from somewhere in the bedroom I had never noticed. Only then did I realize Shen Buyu had installed a camera in my room long ago. The basement door suddenly opened. Shen Buyu walked in and placed what she was carrying beside the bed. Her eyes never left me. Warm yellow light illuminated her face. Her eyes were filled with obsession, while her face held a disturbing look of happiness. Little brother, you've been very naughty. She straddled my waist and slowly brushed my face with her cold fingertips. Her voice remained icy, but every word was heavy. Do you know, all these years, how much effort it took to suppress my feelings for you? Do you know how hard it was for me to hold them back? Do you even know that every day, I can only fall asleep after smelling your scent? As she spoke, she lowered her head and paused beside my neck, just as she had on countless nights before, confirming that I was there. She looked at me, and at last, the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. When I learned we weren't related by blood, I had never been happier. It meant I could finally love you openly, and openly make you mine. It was the wish she had buried for more than a decade. Now that she had finally said it aloud, her face held an expression of satisfaction, but that small smile quickly vanished. But, little brother, you haven't been good. You actually started avoiding me. Do you know how much that hurt me? I had planned to help you accept me little by little, but you actually tried to run and leave me. She grabbed my collar, her voice beginning to tremble. You were the one who walked into my world, and now you want to leave without even saying goodbye. Fangs you, don't you think you're being cruel? If you leave me, I really will die. She said it softly, but the words were like a knife, driving deep into my heart. She looked down at me, expectation in her eyes, and danger hidden beneath it. But it doesn't matter, little brother. Tonight, we'll finally be together for real. I struggled desperately, the handcuffs scraping my wrist raw, but I couldn't break free. A flicker of heartache crossed Shen Bai's eyes, but was quickly replaced by obsession. She picked up a syringe from beside her. Stop struggling, little brother. This way, you won't be able to leave me. The cold liquid was injected into me. My strength ebbed away bit by bit, and my vision quickly darkened. An unnatural flush spread across my face. Her face gradually blurred before my eyes, until I lost consciousness completely. When I woke again, it was already daylight. A beam of light streamed through the basement's small window. Shen Bai was curled up in my arms, fast asleep. I was exhausted and could barely muster any strength. All I could do was listen to her steady breathing. I turned my head. Her hair was spread across my chest, and a peaceful smile rested on her face. I watched her as last night's chaotic thoughts replayed in my mind. The tangled emotions in my heart gradually settled. I thought of the more than 20 years we had spent together, and the feelings she had buried in her diary for over a decade. I also remembered how, when I learned we weren't related by blood, I couldn't hide my joy. The truth was, the moment I learned we weren't related by blood, my feelings had already changed. It was only our status as brother and sister that kept me from admitting it. Now that barrier no longer existed, and I no longer wanted to lie to myself. I raised the arm I could still move and held her a little tighter. Shen Bai awoke with a start. She sat up in my arms, her eyes filled entirely with fear and unease for the first time. Please don't leave, okay? Little brother, I really can't live without you. Her voice trembled, and tears began to fall. Seeing her reddened eyes and trembling lips softened my heart. I gazed at her for a long time, then reached out and wiped the tears from her face. I lowered my head and kissed her. The kiss was gentle, but carried endless love and promise. All right, I'm not leaving. She froze, as if she couldn't believe her ears. Several seconds passed before she suddenly threw herself into my arms and burst into tears. Her sobs held both hurt and joy, along with the release of finally feeling safe. Sister, I'm not leaving. Not in this lifetime. I held her and gently patted her back, letting her tears soak my shirt. I took Shen Buyu back to the Shen residence and told my parents about us. To my surprise, they didn't object. We realized long ago that Buyu's feelings for you were far from ordinary. With you by her side, we're actually relieved. Buyu has suffered for so many years. A-xiu, you must treat her well from now on. I will. After Fang's parents found out, they accepted it too. Only Shen Buji quietly pulled me aside. Buddy, are you really going to marry my sister? She was so strict with us growing up. Your life is going to be miserable. I looked at Shen Buyu in the distance and smiled. From the day I walked into her room at 5, we'd already become inseparable. Alright, I wish you happiness. Our wedding was simple. Only our two families and a few close friends attended. The wedding avoided lavish pomp and unnecessary guests. It suited Shen Buyu perfectly. Shen Buyu stood before me in a white wedding dress. There was no trace of her former obsession in her eyes. All that remained was tenderness and happiness. Buyu, please take care of me for the rest of our lives. A-xiu, I'll be with you for the rest of our lives. The moment we slipped the rings onto our fingers, we finally went from siblings without a blood tie to true lovers. Everyone there had seen her make an exception only for me and watched me step into her world, one step at a time, over the years. After we married, Shen Buyu's emotional detachment disorder didn't disappear completely, but she began to feel anger and joy again. And when I fell ill, her worry showed plainly on her face. Her obsession also eased considerably. Still, whenever she saw me talking to another woman, she would immediately tighten her grip on my hand. You're the only one I love. Shen Buji occasionally came over for a free meal. Whenever he saw Shen Buyu being gentle with me, he was still utterly stunned. Shen Buyu couldn't be bothered to explain. She simply put a piece of meat in his bowl. Eat more, and stop overthinking. We usually had breakfast together, then went to our respective offices. In the evening, she cooked when we got home, while I did the dishes, then curled up on the sofa to watch a movie. When work kept her busy during the day, she would still message me to ask if I'd eaten on time. On free weekends, we'd take our parents out to the countryside. Her smiles grew more frequent. Her former coldness and loneliness slowly faded. Some people said I had healed her, but only we knew that, over those 20+ years, we'd always been holding each other up. When I was 5, I entered her world and became her only light. Now she holds my hand and has become my home for the rest of my life. For all the years to come, I'll stay by her side, and she'll walk with me